What if I told you in 2019, 7 men hatched a plot to impersonate former President Uhuru Kenyatta's voice and scam the late billionaire, CEO and founder of Samia Africa Limited out of 10 million Kenyan shillings to a single phone call? Welcome to Masters of Illusions, Act 1 of the Coronation series. And our message throughout this series is this: always do your due diligence. And in this episode, we shall continue to help you see why. The late Naushad Merali is one of Kenya's pioneering industrialists. Born on 2nd January 1951 in Mombasa, Kenya, Noshad always had a knack for business from a young age. After graduating college in London, he came back home to Kenya and he began his career in the 1970s as a finance clerk at Rice Motors in Nairobi. At age 24 in 1975, he purchased the company from its owner, who was retiring and moving back to Germany. Noshad grew the business and made it very profitable. 6 years into managing it, he acquired another company, this time round, a construction company called KSh10M. Young Noshad was doing really well for himself business-wise, and in 1985, he was one of the investors who bought the Commercial Bank of Africa Group, CBA. In a 2013 interview with Forbes magazine, Naushad Merali explained that to make the CBA Group buyout happen, he formed a consortium with other investors that included the Kenyatta family, and he has maintained a long-standing business relationship with the Kenyatta family ever since. Noshad would go on to continue growing his portfolio of investments by acquiring other businesses, including the First National Bank of Chicago, Firestone East Africa, Eveready East Africa, and Sasini Company, among others. To organize and properly structure these acquisitions, he formed a holding company called the Samia Africa Group, which today is a conglomerate of 15 companies operating across East Africa, the Conmen region, and Europe, in various sectors including financial services, agriculture, and IT. Notably, in 2000, Noshad partnered with French media giant Vivendi to launch Kcell, one of Kenya's first mobile phone networks. Through successive corporate transitions, Kcell evolved over the years into Celtel, Zain, and ultimately Airtel Kenya. Due to the multi-million empire he had built, the late Naushad Merali was featured on the Forbes Africa's Richest list 5 years consecutively. This was from 2011 to 2015 as among the top 3 wealthiest people in Kenya and the top 50 in Africa at large. In 2015, Forbes estimated his net worth would be a whopping $370 million. We are sharing Naushad's extensive background to emphasize that scammers who later conned him were dealing with a highly educated, exceptionally astute businessman, and they still got him. On 14th January 2019, Naushad, who had traveled abroad, supposedly got a phone call from a Kenyan number. To make it look real, the scammers had even listed it on the Truecaller app as Uhuru Kenyatta President. To this day, the number has that name on Truecaller. When Naushad picked the phone call, he actually thought it was former President Uhuru Kenyatta, since the person's voice sounded exactly like that of the president. Even the police later came out saying that the individual who had made the call had perfected mimicking former President Uhuru Kenyatta's voice to the T. Naushad and the person who was impersonating Uhuru Kenyatta's voice exchanged some pleasantries and they got down to business. This individual told Naushad that he had a prime piece of land located in Milimani, Nairobi County that he wanted to sell to Samia Africa. The individual then asked Naushad for 10 million Kenyan shillings in advance as facilitation fees for the deal. Naushad was sold and nothing seemed suspicious to him. It's also important to keep in mind that Naushad Merali was accustomed to doing business with the Kenyatta family, which is another reason why he did not find the direct call from the president unusual. After getting off the call with the scammers, trusting it was the president, Naushad then reached out to one Mr. Akif, who was the finance director at his company, and directed him to handle the payment logistics and process the transaction. After Merali gave his finance team the green light to process the money, he put them in touch with the supposed head of state. And during the follow-up phone conversations, the fraudsters who are pretending to be the president shared with the finance director the bank account where he'd sent the money, and the finance director sent the money their way. It wasn't until early Feb of 2019 that Samia Africa realized they had been scammed. They came to this realization when they wrote a letter to the State House asking for a meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta to finalize their Milimani land deal, only for State House to get back to them, letting them know that the president had never called Noshad regarding any land transactions. They had no knowledge or involvement in the deal, and the bank account provided did not belong to any government entity. Samia Africa reported the matter to the police, and the police treated it as an urgent matter, obviously, because the case involved the president and one of his family friends, who also happened to be one of the richest men in Kenya. On 23rd Feb 2019, the DCI announced they had arrested 7 individuals who they alleged were behind the scam. The 7 culprits were William Simiyu, David Luganya, Gilbert Kirunja, Duncan Mushai, Isaac Wajekeche, Anthony Wafula, and Joseph Wasawa. Of the 7, the police reported that Gilbert Kirunja was the one who faked former President Uhuru Kenyatta's voice during the call with Naushad Merali. The police also alleged that the 7 were your typical Nairobi sharp boys who were part of an organized criminal syndicate that specialized in voice-phishing, also known as vishing, and corporate fraud. For context, voice-phishing or vishing is a scamming tactic whereby scammers use fraudulent phone numbers, voice-altering software, text messages, and social engineering impersonating tech customer support, banks, or government agencies' officials to make their targets give them sensitive information, like their bank passwords, or send them money. Additionally, on Wednesday, 27th Feb 2019, the police raided a house in Ruiru after linking the property to the same syndicate that defrauded Naushad Merali.
It is in this residential house in Gatongora village in Ruiru, Kiambu County, where a multi-agency team involving the Special Crime Unit and Ruiru police officers nabbed a whopping 32.6 billion in fake currency. The currency in form of dollars, sterling pounds and Kenyan shillings were recovered stashed in over 15 metal boxes.
US dollars we have 324 million. Sterling pounds we have 1 million. Euro bonds 840 euros, and Kenya shillings 1 million.
2 suspects, among them a 56-year-old Kenyan Joseph Munyao, a licensed gun holder, and his alleged 41-year-old business partner Nancy Muthoni Muchori, were arrested in the over 5-hour search mission by police. According to neighbors, Munyao, reportedly a pastor in an unidentified Nairobi-based church, relocated from an estate in Runda in Nairobi barely a month ago. He and his wife are said to have bought the spacious house at 2.5 million shillings from where the fake money was stored.
These are people who have been operating the business of money laundering and pretending to be making some fake money.
Of the 7 men who were arrested, we'd love to spotlight Joseph Wasawa, and this is because before his arrest for the Naushad Merali scam, he had long been a familiar face in the Kenyan blogs. The blogs in particular often portrayed him as leading a flamboyant lifestyle and as a high-flying businessman. Funny enough, you'll start to notice a pattern among many of the individuals we cover in this series who are accused of fraud. They are often given a platform by local media, especially blogs, that spotlight their businesses or lifestyles, with little to no due diligence. The earliest we could connect Wasawa to the Kenyan blogs was in 2014, when he was accused of fatally shooting 22-year-old Mitch Kibiti, a second-year student at Mombasa University College, after a disagreement at Wasawa's entertainment joint called Itonia Club in Kimilili, Bungoma. Wasawa would later be acquitted of Mitch Kibiti's murder on 13 October 2023 due to insufficient evidence. The victim's father, one David Kibiti, also filed an affidavit stating that the family had reconciled with Wasawa through alternative dispute resolution and wished to have the case terminated. In 2016, he was trending again in the blogs. This time, he had piggybacked on the newly found and short-lived fame of the late Saleh Wanjala, famously known as the Bungoma James Bond. You may remember Wanjala as the man who gained short-lived fame on 13 May 2016 when he clung to the landing skids of a helicopter ferrying the body of the late businessman Jacob Juma as it took off from poster grounds in Bungoma. Wasawa capitalized on Wanjala's popularity by purchasing plane tickets for him and 11 members of his family to fly from Kisumu to Nairobi, an act that was quickly picked up and covered by the blogs. The following year, in 2017, Wasawa was once again making headlines in Kenyan blogs, this time round because of his lavish traditional wedding, which took place in a very small village called Nzatani in Kitui. Wasawa reportedly arrived with his bridal party in 4 helicopters. All hotels and guest rooms in Kitui town were fully booked for the event, and the ceremony was also attended by several politicians, including Babu Owino, who later publicly distanced himself from Wasawa after he was arrested over the Naushad Merali fraud case. Now back to the case. The 7 suspects pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy to defraud the late Naushad Merali and were initially released on bail in February of 2019 as the case went on. 5 years later, in May of 2023, the Director of Public Prosecutions, DPP, dropped the charges against all 7 men. The DPP dropped the charges due to lack of witnesses after the complainant, Naushad Merali, passed away on that July of 2021 after a short undisclosed illness. Since the case relied heavily on his personal testimony regarding the fraudulent phone call he received, his death created a significant evidentiary gap. The DPP also said that after the complainant died, the investigating officer couldn't find any witnesses to testify. Even efforts to track Samia Africa's finance director to testify had failed, and this is according to the DPP. Of the 7 men who had been arrested, Joseph Wasawa would have another run-in with the law still in 2023 when he was accused of allegedly defrauding a Tunisian businessman of $400,000, which was about 60 million Kenyan shillings at the time. This was in a fake gold scam. During his arrest in September of 2023 at Villa Mawe in Garden Estate, Nairobi, the police claimed to have also found him in possession of counterfeit dollars totaling to about $634,000. Wasawa was cleared of the gold fraud case on that September 2025 due to insufficient evidence directly linking him to the alleged fraud. With the legal cases behind him, Wasawa has now set his eye on politics, and he has his eye on the Webuye West parliamentary seat in the 2027 general elections. As we wrap up, this is a good point to remind you that con artists succeed in conning someone because they know how to project so much confidence, charm, and authority in what they are convincing you to do. They make you feel safe. They sound like they know what they are talking about. They are convincing. They ease any doubts you may have, and once they have won your trust, then they take you to the cleaners, taking your money or other valuables. This is what happened with the late Naushad Merali, and it can happen to anyone. Thank you for joining us today. If you made it this far, we hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up, like, share, or comment. It really goes a long way in helping us keep the lights on. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you're notified when the next video goes live. In the meantime, remember, anyone can be a scammer and anyone can be scammed. So please take care, stay safe, and always trust your gut.